Well, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to spend some time together.
Absolutely, my pleasure too. So it's my first attendance of an AMD conference. I'm really impressed by what I'm seeing today and what I've been hearing in the press also in the last few days. Some really big stuff happening here.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time to be at AMD, and we're super happy that you could come join us.
Yeah, and it suddenly looks like you're kind of becoming a major competitor to another player in the field, right? So I'd love to hear more about why, what's taking us there? What is taking AMD to be a major competitor to NVIDIA?
Well, I would maybe take a little bit of a step back in time and look at the evolution of AMD over, say, the last 10 years.
Yeah.
With the introduction of EPYC in the CPU space, I think AMD established itself as a company who could deliver highly complex core technology in the CPU space,
right,
with an eye for what are the problems that the customers truly have and how can we help them solve them. I think that's Lisa, our CEO, Dr. Lisa Su, talks about chasing the most difficult problems in the world. And that breeds the discussion of how can we help solve customer problems, the toughest customer problems. In the server case, it was how do we deliver an architecture for CPUs that maps to the single processor, dual processor space, bottom of the stack, top of the stack, preserving features, and being able to do that in a way that's lower cost of ownership, lower total cost of ownership, and high performance. And that's something that I think the company's done a reasonable job of on the CPU side.
Yeah. And I can see that happening also on the server side right now. And a lot of bigger companies are identifying AMD as a big player in the performance and cost performance.
We've actually been very blessed to continue to grow our momentum in the market. Our market segment share was just reported by Mercury Research at 46.2% of revenue share for x86.
Really? Because that's higher than what I read actually recently. I read 34%. You're saying 46%?
46%, yeah, revenue share. And so, that trajectory over time, I think has, as you suggested, it's continued to bring AMD to the forefront as a core technology provider. Now, in parallel with that, going back to your initial question, we've been developing GPU technology for several generations also under the brand of Instinct for the data center. And the Instinct data center GPU business has been on a continued growth path over time also, following a similar approach in the sense of taking our silicon roots, our architecture roots, and our customer innovation roots, getting to know what are the core challenges the customers are looking for. And we've developed several generations of the Instinct GPUs now that are available. And some of the most recent press you read about involves taking advantage of our 4th generation GPUs in very, very large frontier lab deployments.
Recently you've announced the big racks that you're putting into major players as well. So when did this come up and what's the difference here?
Yeah, so if you were to go back and look at some of the investments AMD's been making over time, it's actually been very methodical and well thought out to eventually get to a point where a complete rack scale architecture could be developed with AMD technology, CPU, GPU, networking technology, but then also there was the acquisition of ZT Systems as a manufacturer of systems themselves. And what we did is we took the manufacturing portion of that business and we sold that off and maintained the core of the intellectual capability in the team to do design. And we've built a rack scale architecture called Helios now. It's a 72 GPU based system, high performance networking embedded in it. And that reference design is actually being deployed out to the world, where the thesis and the feedback that we hear is silicon choice and diversity is critically important and open ecosystems is important. It's an open design.
This is the one that you've just installed or about to install for Microsoft and others as well.
There's a number of announced partnerships. Meta actually has showcased their version of Helios. We've talked about doing work in Frontier Labs. So yeah, it's getting really, really good traction, and there's probably a series of announcements that may happen tomorrow wrapped around that too, but we're very excited.
One of the big questions all our customers are asking as well is, where is AMD with the software? How's it going to compete with the CUDA from NVIDIA to enable things like training and inferencing and so forth? So where's
That's a great question. I mean, if I go back to one of the core pillars of the company's strategy, the first one is high performance silicon. I've addressed that quite a bit. The second is around open, and it's open ecosystems, and that includes open standards. So you'll see that we focus on things like Ultra Ethernet, UA Link. These are standards that are documented, deployed into the world, and interoperability takes place so multiple players can contribute into it. On the software side, it's open source, and our open source offering in the GPU space is called ROCm. And the ROCm stack, which we spent a little bit of time talking about in a prior meeting, that stack is continuing to get developer momentum around the world. We've invested heavily in both initially getting core deployments out and then been on a beat rate of releases over time, and the developer community and involvement has only continued to grow. And a large piece of that is because the industry wants to see choice. They want to see the ability to innovate on top of base software stacks. And that's what they've been trained and learned to do over the years. So we're just applying it to the GPU world.
That's very important. And I think everybody needs to know how to use it and also be educated as to how it can compete, at least do the same job or even better than competitors.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so what you'll find is that we continue to invest in optimization. We continue to invest in evolving the ROCm offering over time. The other thing we're doing is we have a number of different architectures that can have ROCm layered across the top of it. So if you look across the AMD stack, our objective is to integrate more and more architectures underneath that umbrella in time.
That's really cool. I mean, you mentioned that the company's doing acquisitions. Is it doing acquisitions in the ISV space as well? Or just in the hardware?
Very interesting that you asked that. So there's a mixture of different acquisition types that I've seen since I've been here, ranging from the large scale, which predated my joining the company, which is something like a Xilinx, moving into something more strategic from an asset perspective, like the ZT Systems teams that help bring capability inside. But most recently, we actually announced the acquisition of a company called Next, M-E-X-T. And Next is essentially, it's a company that's developed software algorithms, AI-based, so think of it as an AI prediction algorithm for paging in a system to help optimize the performance of a system and allow for, I'll call it a better footprint, an optimized footprint for memory in particular in systems. So it's a mixture of different types.
And when it comes to foundation layers, of course, OpenAI and Anthropic are big names here, but there's a lot coming out from China.
Yes.
Hemi and all sorts, right? So are you combining this expertise, looking at everything, or just focused on the US?
No, absolutely. We have relationships with all of the major model providers, and a big objective of ours is to make sure that we have a very tight relationship with the various model providers. What we see happening in the end markets is a number of companies are investing in utilizing frontier infrastructure, but the cost structure of that is dramatic, right? Rising token expense. In our own company's instance, there's internal stories of utilizing a full year's worth of budget in a very short period of time as we've deployed it out, and people use it.
You're the first ones to say that.
No, and we hear this from end customers too, right? And what that drives is a discussion to ask a question of how do we optimize around this? Can we use the open source models that you've described running on local on-prem?
Absolutely, and that's where our customers also are asking. They don't want to see just one major mega sovereign data center.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of, apart from hyperscalers, this morning we were talking about neoscalers, lots of medium-sized.
Yes. Yeah, the neo clouds is a new group of entrants into the market, and then companies are also looking at, as part of a hybrid strategy, how do they potentially run portions of their workloads on-prem with open source models that takes that token cost down. And it's really, the way I look at it is it's like right-sizing the destination for the model you're going to use. And so things like intelligent router capability being placed in front of either a directive to a frontier lab or to local, I'll call it more cost-effective, but maybe less complex inquiries, something we see a lot of folks looking into. It's early days, but it's super exciting.
That's really exciting. And I see also technology coming to the endpoint, to the user. You've got now Halo,
yes,
which is a really exciting little box. How do you see this playing in the market? Is it going to make a hybrid system of intelligent endpoints as well as supported by servers to make this localization better?
I think what we're going to find is that AI is going to end up in a number of different places, and each one of them is going to have a different application requirement. Right. And the beautiful thing for AMD, the thing I'm most excited about as being part of the company, is that the number of architectures that we have to go address that is broad. So if you think about physical AI, where it's I'll call it, it's a slightly different use case, but requires different types of architectures like FPGA technology. We have FPGA technology. If you look at a laptop sitting inside a corporate environment where they want to run a local model, you can run it on an AI PC. We have ROCm for that. If you have a developer who wants to go develop something that's maybe running a local model inside an infrastructure, we have the Halo product that you just described it's capable of taking different sizes of models and running those locally. And then of course, we have relationships with our rack scale architecture I just described, Helios, that is involved with some of the largest frontier labs in the world.
You mentioned, consumption of tokens from the cloud and so forth is becoming super expensive for some. And we have, as a distributor, one of the largest in the world, we have thousands of SMB customers, yes, small and medium size. And they're afraid to jump into this and put restrictions even on the use. Right. So where do you see the technology supporting the SMB environment?
The beautiful thing is that you can actually run models without having to leverage necessarily a GPU, depending on the size and scale of the model. So what we're finding is as we go out and we engage the market, it can sometimes be an education story. It may not be that all of the tokens that are being spent utilizing frontier model infrastructure is required, but it takes a trusted advisor engagement and then a solution to be provided. And that's something that you guys do incredibly well. Our channel partners, we love working with you because you have reach, you understand the customer challenges, and we have the core technology that can be used to build a solution. So, I think in the small and medium business space, it's absolutely an opportunity for us to go out and showcase what are the different types of models, what types of hardware can they be put in, and then almost do t-shirt sizing to provide to them the options for the different models that are out there.
And many of the models nowadays are also downloadable, so it can protect or be protected, at least protect the company and reduce the tokens that are being consumed out there. So how do you see the hybrid model technology? Is it going to be more focus on the localization of GPUs, lower cost, or combined with TPUs or something, whilst if a company wants to contain the security and so forth?
I think the topic of security is definitely one that's going to continue to be top of mind for everyone. I mean, there's a portion of the market that wants to run everything on-prem because they want to keep all of their information secure, and I think that's going to be one model. There's going to be another model where folks are looking to reduce overall token spend, but depending on the company and what their business is, what their use cases are, they may have a completely different solution. They may have very little frontier work and they can do a lot on-prem, or it could be inverted the opposite direction. For us, the way we look at it is it needs to be uncovered through a consultative engagement with the customers, and we need to be bringing solutions packaged together. I mean, I was telling somebody just earlier today, I haven't walked into an enterprise customer once where they said, hey, I'd like to buy a CPU from you. It's always, these are the challenges that I have. What solutions do you have for me? And that's something that we continue to work on with our partners in the industry to build those up.
It's exciting times. So my final question would be, okay, things are happening so quickly, developments are happening. How do you predict and see the future, say, in the next 3 to 5 years for the technology? I know it's, are we going to supercomputing, super intelligence? Where are we going?
It's a great question. It's one that I often ponder just because of the style of work that I do and the people that I get to work with. I don't think anybody has really perfect view of this. What I see out into the future is a continued build out of agentic as a modality, and within that, interestingly enough, it's an impact to our business, a very large amount of CPU technology that maybe we hadn't historically anticipated would be needed. Like, without having foresight of what agentic represented, you would think that I'll call it the unit volume in the market would just continue trucking along at a single digit compound annual growth rate. And what we're looking at now, based on how people are using agentic technology, it's really clear that for our business, CPU demand is going to be quite large compared to what we originally thought. And the GPU side of things is going to continue to be critically important too. But the end use cases are where I have the biggest question mark. I think there's going to be so many different use cases that we haven't even seen yet that are coming. And so it's those who are going to win, I think, are the ones that jump into it, get familiar early, but are also willing to be agile and realize that this is going to be a very evolving market, and we're just going to have to keep our fingers on the pulse.
And you mentioned agentic, and again, we've seen already there's so many great applications for agentic, but also some real dangers. I mean, we just saw one agent slip out from a testing case only yesterday and hack another startup.
Back to your point on the security side, I mean, I think there's a whole field around agentic security that's going to continue to grow and be very important.
I mean, I think there's now like 10 agents to one hacker.
Is that right? I haven't heard that stat, but it doesn't surprise me at all.
And it's growing.
Yeah. It's not going to slow down, that's for sure.
Agentic hacker.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You have to have an agent to protect.
As they say, may we live in interesting times. Absolutely. I think we're in very interesting times.
Thank you so much for making the time. Really a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot more.
I look forward to it. It was a pleasure talking to you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.